PlayStation.
Check out the hose on that guy.
Today on the show, we review Firefighter FD18 for the PlayStation 2, Wrath Unleashed on the Xbox, Pokemon Colosseum for the GameCube, and it versus its 7 Samurai 20XX against Onimusha Blade Warriors. All right, first game we're going to talk about is Firefighter FD18. This one's from Konami for the PlayStation 2. What'd you think of this one?
I can't believe this is the 18th game in this series.
I know, man.
Firefighter
Where
FD
did the other 17 go?
17 I thought was incredible. Now, there was a game that came out similar to this in the arcade a couple years ago where you actually grabbed a hose.
Yes.
And that was first-person mode. But this game is a third-person game, very unique. I had a lot of fun.
I'll tell you something. This game, it's kind of like, you know, like a Resident Evil or something with the fire hose. I mean, you're battling fire, basically, and spraying it down. You've got these sort of fire extinguisher charges, things that you can do. You've got an axe to block down doors if you need to. And
that's right.
Obstacles. You boot down doors to get inside of things.
You can control the nozzle on the hose if you want it, you know,
a wider spray
or
narrow.
Narrow.
Yes, let me finish your sentences for you.
And you can also use the right analog stick to kind of, you know, move the hose up and down and back and forth. Aim, sure.
The graphics are very cool. They've done a very nice job here with creating the fire effects and the illusions of you know, flame traveling past you and explosions going on all around. There are even boss fires.
Boss fires.
That you have
boss monster fire battles. The storyline is kind of like Backdraft a little bit. You have to kind of follow this arsonist, and the arsonist is working for this other secret guy. So there's a whole storyline that's unfolding. Now, the voiceovers are, you know, debatable.
I didn't mind them too.
But,
I mean,
but the storyline isn't too bad.
And it does give you, you know, a sense of challenge.
You go in, you rescue hostages.
Yes.
It's a big part of the game is rescuing the hostages.
There's
a real easy map screen, so you know exactly where to go, and you see an overhead. A lot of times there'll be a lot of smoke as well.
Yes,
and so you have to crouch down to get underneath the smoke, and you're going around like this with your big hose. It's not just about putting out the fire, though. You have to, like, time certain things, like, you know, the fire will go, and you have to get through. And you can even run through a fire, and sometimes when you do catch on fire, you have to use the left analog stick to kind of shake the fire
There's
off.
a great sense of, like, the fire surrounding you and encroaching on you, and it gets, you know, you feel like you're in danger.
It's very, like,
tense, totally, absolutely. Because you don't know what's going to explode. You have cars that flip over and fly across the screen.
Oh, the fires blow you back, and you fall down on the ground. There's stuff, you don't know what's going to come out.
Isn't it funny, though, how long the hose is? You can just keep walking for miles and miles, and no problem. No, never have to tug on the thing. It's always there for you, man. And now, obviously, it gets a little repetitive. I mean, all you're really doing is rescuing folks and putting out fires, and you battle the occasional boss fire, but you know, you see a lot of the same things over and over again. Now, it has some control problems. It's not perfectly, you know, finessed, but you get used to it. I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10.
I give it exactly an 8. We agreed on we agreed on every single point in this whole review.
Well, the Konami got it right this time.
Got to be a first. On the positive side, this game offers a completely unique style of gameplay. The graphics and fire effects are really well done. And I thought it was really neat the way they incorporated a lot of different firefighting techniques in the gameplay.
On the negative side, the controls could have been a little bit tighter. Although we both really enjoyed the unique gameplay, it does get repetitive fighting fires over and over again. And we like the story, it did pull us in, but some of that voiceover is just way too cheesy. All right, let's move from firefighting now to mythological action strategy. This is Wrath Unleashed.
Okay, let's do that.
It's a very weird segue, I know. Yes. Wrath Unleashed from LucasArts.
Did I mention this guy's hose?
You did. For the Xbox and also available for the PlayStation 2. Now, what did you think of this one?
Well, now, I'm a huge fan. I go way back. I'm old school, son.
Yes.
I like Archon 2. You guys remember that?
I remember Archon 1.
Archon 2 is this great game where it's basically chess, except you move these mythological creatures around.
Yes.
And in order to take over a position, if somebody's sitting in it, you have to battle. Well, this is what Wrath Unleashed is.
Absolutely.
Now, I loved Archon 2, but I thought I was going to get into Wrath Unleashed.
Yes.
And for some reason, I just couldn't. Maybe it was the camera angles. Maybe it was the control of the creatures.
I'll tell you exactly what the problems are with this game.
What's that?
The controls for the fighting aren't that tight.
Right.
And that's what the big, reward for playing the game is. But what really kills this damn game are all the load times in the thing. So you're playing as one of 4 elemental creatures. You've got the, earth, wind, fire, and air. As one of these elemental creatures, you can take over different hexes, and you might do better in sort of the lava area if you're the fire elemental guy. And if there's a big sort of ice little area, you might be better off if you're the water elemental person.
Right.
What's interesting about the choices for the creatures that represent these elementals, did you see what the women were wearing?
Well, barely anything.
Well, one of them
I loved.
is like the Janet Jackson bikini. and it's just like, what are they thinking, man? I mean, they're basically wearing G-strings.
Now, the music in this game is really well done. It's a live orchestral score by Jack Wall.
The music is probably the best part about this game.
Jack Wall did the music for Myst 3, working on Myst 4. Now, there's 32 different characters that you can play in this game.
Well, the little creatures, you mean. I really like the creatures in this thing, too. They've done a very good job sort of creating, weird-looking giants and unicorns.
And they all have different specialties.
Yes.
Some are slower but are more powerful.
Right.
Some are quicker but not as powerful.
And you've got some characters that can cast some spells, so you can teleport and you can heal your other characters on the board.
And you can play 4 players as well.
Yes.
In this game. Although, let me ask you a question. Is it online?
No. It's cool that there's a strategic element to this, and there is some action kind of rewards. It's just not as fun as I wanted it to be. 6.5 out of 10.
I agree with you. 6.5 exactly.
On the positive side, Wrath Unleashed is an unofficial update to Archon, which is a very cool game concept. The creature designs in this thing are very cool, and we love the music.
On the negative side, there's a lot of loading times, especially on the PlayStation 2. Although they have 4-player multiplayer, we would have liked to have seen some online action. And finally, overall, it just didn't draw us in the way we wanted it to.
Well, we just agreed on 2 games, but something tells me when we come back, we're not going to be agreeing on the next one. It's Pokemon Colosseum. Stick around. Hey, I'm just waiting here for my train, and I picked up a great Game Boy Advance game to play. This is called Static Shock, and it's developed by the guys at Vicarious Visions, one of my favorite development teams out there. They did the great Spider-Man Mysterio's Menace cartridge that I really liked. Now, Static Shock is another type of superhero, but what's cool about him is he has all these awesome electrical powers. So some of the stuff that you can do, of course, you can shoot these electrical bolts at the bad guys, but you can also charge up manholes and levitate. You fly around like that, and you can magnetize things so garbage and pieces of metal will fly all over the screen. You can take things like giant blocks and stuff and magnetize them and move them over there so you can jump up to other levels. There's actually this bad guy that you beat up on that has all of these flame and fire effects all over his body, and he's throwing fireballs at you. You fight these big jelly monsters and stuff like that. Lots of nice, clever surprises, hidden extras to find throughout the game. Static Shock's a cool WB cartoon, and it's a great Game Boy Advance cartridge. Go check it out. Static Shock GBA, 8.5 out of 10. Like this one. All right, we're back, and we're going to talk now about Pokemon Colosseum. This one's from Nintendo for the GameCube.
It's TBG.
Yeah? Explain TBG.
Turn-based garbage.
Oh, right, okay. Yes, this is the new genre that you've created.
Right. Do you think they're turn-based, though, because they originated from the Game Boy Advance?
Yes.
Game Boy?
From the Game Boy
Okay,
game.
but now we're not on the Game Boy anymore.
I know.
Wouldn't it be fun if you could actually release...
Be the monster and then fight
explode
in
these
real
balls,
time. Right.
And then just kind of battle each other?
Well, it might be fun,
that would be fun.
But it wouldn't be what Pokemon...
I mean, I'm going out on a limb there.
This is the first time that you're actually playing a role-playing game around Pokemon. The N64 Pokemon Stadium games were really just battle games where you could fight the Pokemons that you collected and have them keep fighting. Exactly.
Unfortunately, not controlling any of the characters.
Well, that's the style of gameplay that they've chosen for the series. Now, this time they've added a bit of a story around everything. It's a little bit darker.
I personally find no fun whatsoever in just doing this.
You can choose to play the game that way.
And win.
Well,
and win.
At the beginning. It's very simplified at the beginning to sort of get you into the game.
Okay,
but as you
fine.
fight tougher and tougher Pokemon, you're going to have, and tougher Pokemon trainers, you're going to have to, you know, use some of the other skills that you collect along the way. Another thing that they've added to this game, which is in keeping with the Ruby and Sapphire GBA games, you can have 2-on-2 battles, so you can have, you know, like a tiny army of Pokemon against another tiny army of Pokemon. You also get a Colosseum mode in the game. That's where the name of the game comes from, where it's just all battles, just like Stadium, where you can import Pokemon from your Ruby and Sapphire Game Boy Advance cartridges and have them fight. You can also play with your friends. They have to use Game Boy Advances to link up and do all that cable thing like Final Fantasy Chronicles.
But, you know, there's not enough, like, it's not the Madden football of Pokemon.
No,
you know,
you're right.
You play Madden football, there's a gazillion things you could do. So maybe I can slightly look past the turn-based strategy part, okay? But why do they have to have all of the constant reading?
Yes, I knew the complaint about reading.
I want to be told the story. If I went to a movie...
You wouldn't want to read through a movie?
No, and that's why I hate foreign films. I will say this. Can I talk about a positive thing?
Yes, you can, actually. It would be very different.
There would be different.
Yeah.
The positive thing, which I was excited about, is they actually, although it is kind of MIDI, but they actually used orchestral music.
I like the music
in the game.
It was very nice.
And they did a good job of the music, and it was nice to see. Fans of the series are going to love it, but I got to give it a 5.
I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. I have to be honest, I prefer playing Pokemon games on the Game Boy Advance. On the positive side, this is the first time we're getting a 3D RPG Pokemon on the consoles. The music was pretty cool, and you can upload all of your saved Pokemon from Ruby or Sapphire.
On the negative side, if you don't like turn-based games, you're definitely not going to like this one. Although all the Pokemon presentation and gameplay has been updated, it just doesn't seem like it was enough. And the only way to play Pokemon multiplayer is if you have a bunch of GBAs hooked up to your system.
This is called the 8-foot extension cable with spool, and you can get it for the PlayStation 2 or the Xbox. What do you think of this thing?
They couldn't think of a better name than that.
Well, what are they going to do? What are they going to call it? The Hyper Cable?
Sure.
The Hyper Jumper Cable?
That's a great name.
All right, well...
Call it any of those things, just not extension cable with spool.
All right, well, what did you think of the extension cable with spool?
The design on this is extremely interesting. What it is, it's all in a little spool, and the way to extend it is
to turn the spool.
By turning the spool. Now you're thinking to yourself...
That's the idea, anyways.
That's the idea.
Right.
The reality of this thing is that I have never been so frustrated with a peripheral in my entire freaking life.
First of all, you need some kind of, like, military-grade, wire cutters or something like that to be able to open the packaging for this deal.
The packaging's incredible.
Yes.
It is so impossible to turn this thing to get the cable. So you have, like, a 2-inch cable coming out here, and a 2-inch cable coming out here. And I'm turning, and I'm twisting, and everything's all screwed up inside, and I'm trying to get it 3 inches, and I got my foot on the thing. You know, a lot of my internet gear I have now, like when I travel with, like my mouse and my internet connection, got that little spool that you snap, and it all goes back, and it comes out real nice.
Yes.
No. They went the way of Pokemon Colosseum. Turn-based. Huh? Turn-based garbage.
Right. And
TBG.
So basically that means you turn it once and then you pass it to a friend and they turn it once and...
Now, I'll tell you what. The damn thing's shaped like one of those pucks that you put in the urinal.
Right.
And that's exactly where I put it after I finished this review.
So you don't recommend it then?
Absolutely not.
I don't recommend it either. On the positive side, the extension cable with spool is a pretty cool idea.
On the negative side, it's impossible to open the packaging. It's impossible to turn this thing to get the cable to extend. Bottom line, it works better as a urinal puck.
Stick around. After the break, it's 7 Samurai versus Onimusha Blade Warriors. All right, what do you think about Rebellion from LucasArts for the PC?
Rebellion. It's got the Star Wars license. Let's be honest, this game is absolutely horrible in every aspect.
Well, horrible is pretty strong.
Okay, terrible, is that good?
No, I was not...
Awful.
I was not entertained the whole way through, but I kept playing. And
unimaginable?
You know what's good about this game, though, is that it's so thorough and it's so detailed. You actually get a sense that you're like flipping through pages of the Star Wars encyclopedia.
Yeah.
I guarantee if you are a Star Wars nut and you want to find out even more about the Star Wars universe, this game will introduce you to all kinds of new stuff.
What'd you give it?
I'd give it about a 6 out of 10. It does hold your attention if you get into it. You got to give it time, though. It's not something that you can just plug into and forget about.
I've always loved LucasArts. I've always loved Star Wars, but I have to give this game a 3. There's so many better games by LucasArts.
Buried Treasure is brought to you by EB Games. We take games seriously.
Hey, I've got a buried treasure here that came out for the PlayStation 1. It came out sort of late in the day on the PlayStation 1, but it's still worth checking out and looking for and going back and trying to pick this one up. It's called Metal Slug X, and it was developed by the folks at S&K, who are famous for creating all kinds of cool arcade-type experiences, and that's exactly what you're getting in this game. It's a scroller shooter type of experience where you're dropped in as a little sort of soldier guy, and you're running through and you can shoot a variety of different weapons, machine guns, flamethrowers, bazookas, that kind of stuff, taking on all kinds of bad guys. But what's fun about this is that as that little soldier guy, you can jump into all these different vehicles, and it really changes up the gameplay. You can hop into a tank, or ride a gun-toting camel, or hop into a jet plane and take on bad guys in the sky. Great cartoony graphics, very tough, aggressive enemies, really, really nice. Lots of great explosion sounds and cool weapon effects. It's not a very realistic war game, and there's lots of great realistic war games out there, but if you want to change of pace, go check it out. It's Metal Slug X for the PlayStation 1. Today on Versus, we've got 2 samurai games. We've got 7 Samurai 20XX from Sammy for the PlayStation 2 versus Onimusha Blade Warriors from Capcom for the PlayStation 2. Now let's talk about the graphics for both these titles.
I mean, this really is the battle of the turds. I just want to start off by saying that. The graphics in 7 Samurai are really horrible. Onimusha, they're just kind of horrible.
Well,
but
that's a little over the top.
Not really.
Come on, I like
7 Samurai. Come on.
Don't you like the character designs in 7 Samurai? They obviously spent some serious money on building different kinds of cool samurai, futuristic characters.
But they look awful.
Actually, I like those characters a lot. I like the animations.
I don't know what to say.
I like the look of them. I like the costumes. I like the whole design.
You like their 3-frame animation?
They have some pretty decent animations.
You like the circle underneath them that's supposed to be their shadow because there's no real-time lighting at all?
I'll tell you what I don't like about 7 Samurai. I don't like that the environments are all gray and brown for the most part.
And there's no real-time lighting effect. Pasted, unrealistic.
I did really enjoy the cinematic sequences. I thought those were beautifully done, and I thought that the character design was really nice.
But graphically, Onimusha is definitely the better game.
The environments are all set up with a bunch of different layers, like that old Guardian Heroes game from the Saturn, so you can jump back and forth between them. And the animations and the character designs, they're taken from the regular Onimusha series, but they've been sort of compressed and scaled down and you know, shrunken a little bit. It's not as flashy and cool as they are in the regular series.
I think they're both bad, but I'll give Onimusha the edge in graphics.
Absolutely, Onimusha's a better looking game. Now, what about in the audio department? How do these 2 games stack up?
Look, they both have completely horrible VO. It's embarrassing.
Kotaro, what are you doing here?
I have the ears of a devil, you know.
They both have really kind of arcade style, you know, the one sword swish sound, which you hear for the entire game.
Yes. There's more of them in Onimusha, though, because there's more creatures fighting and more people fighting.
The thought process behind the audio in both these games is
it's
insane.
Too bad in 7 Samurai because they licensed Akira Kurosawa's story and they wanted to build this huge thing. They spent a lot of money on this game, and then they kill it with decisions like that.
Again, if I had to pick one of these piles, I would pick Onimusha for audio.
Onimusha Blade Warriors.
But it's by no means, you know, something they should be proud of.
Yeah, the audio's much better in that game. All right, in terms of the gameplay in Seven Samurai, what'd you think?
Awful. Completely unrealistic. Again, they kind of went for this whole kind of Contra vibe, the Final Fight vibe. Well, they pulled it off. They didn't pull it off.
They moved this classic samurai tale into the future, and they created this whole, you know, world for you to sort of explore. You walk into an environment. They close off the environment with two sort of green force field doors, and then you have to kill all the bad guys to open the door to keep going, and that's the bulk of the game.
No, it's very repetitive.
Oh, it drives you insane, whereas Onimusha Blade Warriors is a completely out of left field idea. It's very strange to be playing these really hardcore characters in this kind of kidified game. I mean, sometimes they're picking up little hammers and stuff, and they're beating each other with hammers and cartoon fans. And
the cool part about Onimusha, which they brought over from the other two good games, once you beat the hell out of somebody, you got to suck in their life force thing, a little soul sucking going on there.
Yes. If I had to choose gameplay, which one I enjoyed more, though, I would go for Onimusha Blade Warriors.
I agree with you there.
Okay. Now, overall,
they both really sucked, and I wouldn't play any of them ever again. But if I had to forcibly be held down against my will to pick one to play, I would probably go with Onimusha.
Me as well. and that was so beautifully spoken.
Thank you.
And true to yourself. That was nice. That was
Thank you
very
so
nice.
much.
So scoring Onimusha Blade Warriors, what would you give that?
I give it a 5.5.
I give it a 6.5. And what about Seven Samurai 20XX?
That'd be a 4.5.
4.5 from me as well.
There you go.
If you've got a Jones for a samurai game, you might want to check.
And there's a gun at your head.
You might want to check out Onimusha Blade Warriors.
Today on the show, we took a look at Firefighter FD18 from Konami for the PlayStation 2. This game featured some very cool fire effects and a completely unique style of gameplay, but the controls could have been a bit tighter, and we didn't dig that cheesy voiceover all that much. For the Xbox, we looked at Wrath Unleashed. This unofficial update to Archon is a pretty cool concept, but the loading times are brutal, and there's no online play. On the GameCube, we looked at Pokemon Colosseum. On the plus side, this is the first 3D Pokemon RPG for the consoles, but to tell you the truth, Pokemon's a little bit more fun on the Game Boy Advance. In Versus, we looked at two samurai games for the PlayStation 2. It was Seven Samurai 20XX from Sammy against Onimusha Blade Warriors from Capcom. We didn't really enjoy either one of these games, but if we had to choose one, it would probably be Onimusha Blade Warriors. In hardware, we looked at Hipgear's 8-foot extension cable with spool. Pretty cool idea. Unfortunately, it didn't spool all that well. On the Game Boy Advance, I reviewed Static Shock. I was pleasantly surprised by this decent platform action game. It's based on the Warner Brothers cartoon. It's good stuff.
Well, that's all the time we have for you guys today. It looks like the firefighting game was our favorite game this time.
Who would have thought?
Awesome.